Hi everybody, it's Justin from Man Bassing. In this video, I'm going to talk about power and action of fishing rods, bass fishing rods, when it comes to bass fishing. I have my rods with me. I'll try and break everything down for you in case you're newish to fishing. Maybe you're trying to purchase a rod and you wanted to make an informed decision. I might leave, I'm thinking about leaving Amazon links to fishing rods, Amazon links in the description box for fishing rods that I've used. I'll explain like the different types of settings for a rod, and then if you want to check out those rods, you can. I'll bring you to Amazon. If you enjoy the video, I'd love to have you as a sub. Go ahead and subscribe, like the video. I do a lot of product reviews over about gear that I've accumulated over the years that produce results quickly, are cost efficient, and durable gear. So you can check all that out. Let's get right into the video. When we're talking about bass fishing rods, and fishing rods in general, but again, this is primarily about bass fishing. With fishing rods, bass fishing rods, you have power and action, and they both mean certain things, and you really want your rod to complement the lure you're going to use, the line you're going to use, and the reel you're going to use. If they don't complement each other and they're not well balanced, you're going to have less of a chance of being successful at fishing and being less efficient. So we talk about power. Power, in some sense, means how strong is the rod. I mean, I think most people have a good understanding of, like, a general understanding of what power means. It's usually the settings are usually you have light and you have heavy, and you have the outer extremes. You have extra light and extra heavy, and then you have a medium, and you have a medium light, medium heavy. Most people understand generally what that is, but what the power refers to is the backbone of the rod. It means how far up the rod will it remain straight and solid until it starts to bend. So if you have, here is, for example, here is my extra heavy. This is my 8-foot extra heavy rod. Give you a bit of a close up here. It's pretty sturdy. God, I can just see all the immature jokes coming in, all the immature comments on this video coming in. But this is, I'll give you a nice close up so you can see how thick it is. I throw on, so this is extra heavy power. And I throw this big, I think it's a 1 3/4 ounce lure. It's a big topwater rat. I throw this basically exclusively on this rod. So now what the power refers to is how far up, like you have your backbone spine, right? And it's gonna, how far does that power run up the rod? Like, I'm putting all the pressure on the end tip here, right? And where does it stop bending? And it looks like it stops bending right around this eye right here. So your power on an extra heavy pole is cousin raised. It's going to come up to this eye, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excuse me, the 6th eye. Now, if this were like a heavy, your power, it would probably bend until some point right here. It would be less power. So that's an example of an extra heavy pole. Here is a medium. Let me just double check. Should just be, yeah, this is medium power. So what we're gonna see is if put pressure on that tip, it really stops bending somewhere around here. So it's like somewhere between these two eyes is where it stops bending. It starts bending, right? Like the rod is no longer straight, right? Like right around here. So that's almost half the rod. So there's less power, there's less backbone, there's less spine. in if I'm using an extra heavy pole, let's think about some of the applications for an extra heavy pole. Throwing a giant rat that, and I'm targeting big bass with this. I'm not targeting bluegill with this. Or a little shad bait fish. I need a fish. I need a rod that can pull fish out of cover. This, you could use this for frogging. I think it's a little, well, maybe you couldn't use it for frogging. It's almost too powerful for frogging. It's like too big of a pole. But you could use an extra, or a heavy or an extra heavy for frogging. Because when you frog, like you see lily pads, right, and you want to throw your frog on top of the lily pad. Well, if a frog strikes the lure, it's going to bring it down, and you're going to have to pull out a bunch of lily pads. So you need a rod that can handle all that. A lot of weight, a lot of resistance. So you need a lot of power. If it were like if I tried to frog with this thing and I got it in the frog, it might break it. Like trying to pull out all that weight because the basket's all wrapped up in the weeds and the lilies. It wouldn't have enough power to pull the fish out. See, that's what you need your power for. That's what you need your backbone. And also, like thinking about the opposite extreme, like I use this a lot to drop shot. Like in drop shot, when I'm out in 25 feet of water, there's usually not much cover for the fish to run to. They're not diving under trees, or there's a lot of times I'm not gonna drop shot in a lot of grass, like 4 or 5 foot long grass. I'm not gonna drop shot on that. So I don't need as much power. I think that gives you a pretty good idea of what power is. It's the backbone, and how far does that backbone extend up the rod until it starts to bend. That's what we're talking about when you're talking about power. So you want a lot of power. I also have, this is my heavy action rod. I use this for swim baiting. I throw these big, and this again I think is like an ounce and a half or somewhere around there. So it's a heavy rod. It's a heavy lure. So I need a rod with a lot of power so I can cast it. If it were light power, and I was trying to cast that lure, I couldn't, because the rod would be flimsy. I couldn't get any power on my cast. And you need power. You think about these hooks, these treble hooks. I need power to set that hook. Like if I try to throw that lure, like I said, it would bend over. But let's say I get it in, let's say I can cast it out right and I get a strike. Well, there's not a lot of power in this for that big lure and those big hooks. So it'd be harder to set that hook effectively. Whereas like on this, for drop shot, I'm using a really thin gauged hook. It's so thin that you don't really need that much power to set the hook, right? It's more like you think about like a syringe, right? Like you don't need a lot of, because it's so thin, the profile's so thin, it just slides through your skin. You don't really need a lot of power. So that, I think, so you want a lot of power with big swim baits, big top waters, frogging, big tubes. Some of these tubes, these California sized tubes, are like, that long. You need a lot of power to cast and to set the hook and to drag fish out of cover. Whereas usually with bass fishing, you don't, like light power, it's kind of like, I think like the cutoff would be medium light for bass fishing. I haven't seen too many people with a light powered rod. But like sometimes, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess like you want to throw tiny little hair jigs that are that big, that weigh an eighth of an ounce. Yeah, you probably want something light powered. Yeah. So think about, I mean, what's your style? What do you fish? I throw this little this little swim bait. I think this is like an eighth of an ounce. I'm not even sure. Maybe a third of an ounce. I'm not really sure, but like I couldn't throw it on my big extra heavy pole. It wouldn't go anywhere. I need something with light power. And also, it doesn't, to set those hooks, you don't need that much power. I guess with these little treble hooks, you need a little bit of power. That's why I throw it on a medium. I'm actually probably going to pick up, I want to throw this more. I probably need something more like a medium light. I have it on a medium right now. I want something a little lighter. But I still need a little bit of backbone to drive those treble hooks. So you want to consider the lure you're using, the hooks you're using, if there's what type of cover there is. Oh my gosh, I'm caught up. For power. I think that should give you a good example of what power is. How far does the power extend up the rod before the rod starts to bend? Now we have to talk about the action. The action is sometimes referred to as speed, but it's basically, we're talking about the tip here of the rod. It's basically how much you can bend the tip of the rod before it stops. If it's fast action, fast speed, it's not going to bend that much. It's loaded up. It loads up quickly. Like the rod's loaded right there. You really can't do much more bending than that. That's about it. So this rod's for a lot of power. You wouldn't be fishing bluegill with this because you just rip the bluegill out of the water. You probably rip the hooks out of the fish's mouth. You know, this rod, it's got fast action. I want my lures also too. The action, the speed, how quickly are you going to set those hooks? Are you going to drive those hooks? Like from when you go to do the hook set, like I need with those big old treble hooks on this, I want a quick hook set. I want it like instantly. Some baits, you actually want them to turn, take the lure and turn. So you need a slower speed, slower action to give that fish time to turn away when the bait's in their mouth. I want with this lure, because it's so artificial, it's so hard plastic, right? They're going to just spit it out. They're going to go up, hit it, realize it's plastic, and spit it out. They spit this out very quickly. You have about less than 2 seconds to set that hook. If you're waiting longer than 2 seconds to drive those hooks home, it's not gonna set, and your hookup ratio is gonna suffer. You need it because it's top water, right? So you see the explosion most of the time. Sometimes you can feel it, but most of the time you see it. Excuse me. From that instant, you have less than 2 seconds to set the hook. So you need an instant hook set. So that's and then we'll look at the other. Here's my medium. This is also fast tip, but it's on a medium rod. So we bend that tip, right? The rod starts bending right around here, right? But it's fast tip. If it were slow tip, if it were slow speed or slow action, you'd be able to bend this, like it would still stop, the power would still extend to here, but this part, if it were slow action, would bend all the way down. And those types of rods, you want slower action for, like, I think about like crankbaiting, right? Like crankbaiting, you don't even have to really set a hook when you crankbait. You kind of just reel and turn your body, right? Like just a very small hook, like, and not even a hook set, you just turn with it. Or a lot of people just reel into it because your crankbaits are somewhere around this big, right? So it's usually in the fish's mouth. If you put too much power with the treble hooks, you might just rip it right out of their mouth. You want you need time for them to take the crankbait and turn. And so as the instant you feel something, right, you go to set your hook, and if it's a slower taper, while you're setting, it's bending and bending and bending, right? So, and you're not, the pressure is coming from the fish turning with it, and that's what's going to set the hook. So if it's the slower the action, the more bend you're going to get in your rod tip. The faster the action, the less bend you're going to get. You want to consider the size line when you're purchasing a rod, getting a rod. How much power, like what are you doing with it, right? What's the application for it? What are you applying it for to? Are you frogging? If you're frogging, you want heavy, extra heavy, right? Somewhere between a 6 to 7 foot pole. Because you don't, usually with pole length, it means greater cast. When you're frogging, you don't really, unless if you're on land, you don't really need that long of a cast. So, but you want to consider power, and you want a fast action or fast speed. Crankbaiting, you want, like, I'd probably go medium power. You want some flex in that rod tip. You want it to take a little time to load up as you're doing your hook set. I'm trying to think of, like, and if you're using micro lures, you might consider that a micro lure. That guy right there, or like a little hair jig, like that big, 1/8 of an ounce. Some guys go even smaller. You got to consider, like, you wouldn't want to put those on an extra heavy pole. You want a light pole. Also, too, power and action or speed. Like, are you going to snap your line when you set it? If I'm throwing this little guy and I have a rod that doesn't flex, it's got extra power and fast speed, and I go to set this hook on a 4-pound line, goodbye. You know what I mean? Even the best line is going to snap. So those, you want to keep all that in mind, like the application, the lure size, and the hook set time. If you need more hook set time, you want a slower speed. If you don't have hook set time, you want a faster speed. I think that should cover it. I think that should inform you. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Drop a like on the video. It really means a lot to me. It really goes a long way. When I'm editing the video, I'll decide whether or not I want to put Amazon links in. I've come across this season, I've come across some good rods that are pretty cheap, the graphite rods. But I'll list the rod and what the power and action of it for you. And it's probably going to be Lew's. That's the video. I hope you liked it. I hope it helped. I hope it gave you a good perspective. So thanks for watching, and I hope you catch a real big bass soon. Thanks. Bye.